Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to talk about Blundstone. These bad boys, excuse my inflexibility, Blunnies, Blundstones, Chelsea boots, that's what they're most known for now. You know what? Let me get up for this. I was looking at some of my old videos, aka the 2 that I posted, and I feel as though I'm getting a little monotone, a little boring, a little long in the tooth. So I'm going to try and change up my tone, my way of speaking. I'm going to change up everything because I know if I was watching these videos, I get a little bit bored. I get tired of hearing the same tone of voice. I'm going to stand up, see if we can change it up for you people, keep you engaged. All right, let's get started. Blundstone. Again, I got notes because this thing ain't getting any better. It is a sieve. My brain is turning into mush, so let's try and see if we can fix that by doing these videos, doing research into things that really interest me, stuff that I've put off because I'm busy. I got a life, I got a family. Let's see what we can do. All right, let's start with some history here, folks. 1850, John Blundstone and his family came from England over to Hobart. We are talking about a 93-day boat ride. 93 days. Could you imagine that? I get annoyed just hearing that I have to take a 4-hour flight somewhere, or if there's one time zone change. And I'm talking about a flight. I'm in a aluminum can flying the speed of sound at 30,000 feet above, and I'm on Wi-Fi or I'm watching a movie that I downloaded on my iPad, and I'm getting upset about that. These people had to go 93 days on a boat. I just think about those old stories you hear about people crossing the Atlantic to go to the Americas, and they're chewing on leather because they ran out of food 7 days ago, and they're trying to make cakes out of sawdust and whatever else they could find, capturing rats just for food. It's crazy to think about 93 days on the boat. In 1870, John Blundstone and Sons is officially a company. John Blundstone and Sons is a boot company. They started off by importing boots, and then finally they were able to source their own leathers, their own materials to create their own boots, and they're starting to make a name for themselves. At the 1894 Hobart International Exhibition, they got an award as a top honor product, a top honor brand. They recognized that there's something special here. We're talking about back in 1894. I'm doing this video in 2026. That's hard to imagine that there's that much time in between the boots that I'm wearing and the boots that they were making back in the day. Let's fast forward a little bit. We're going into the 1900s where they are building 2,000 shoes and boots every week. 2,000 shoes and boots cranked out of a tiny factory that God only knows what the living conditions were. Who knows how many hours a week that some person was sewing boots together and gluing them, and I just can't even picture that. 1900s. If you were lucky enough to have a family member that lived in the early 1900s, which, let's face it, there's not many left, if any, if you're talking about the early 1900s. My grandma was born in 1936, and I can't even imagine the things that she's seen in her life. And this company's banging out 2,000 boots a week. And this is in Australia. This is in the capital of England. This isn't America in New York City or Philadelphia back in 1900. This is Australia, an old prison colony. That's crazy to think about. Now we're going to move up to the 1930s. There's a family, Cuthbertson. I can't say that without feeling like Mike Tyson. I got some sort of lisp. I can't even put that word out. They bought the boot company in the 1930s when the Great Depression was there. Think about that. The Great Depression was such a global issue that even in Tasmania, they had such an effect that the Blundstone company couldn't hold strong. They couldn't hold through. So the Cuthbertson family, and I am so sorry for pronouncing that name wrong because I know I'm doing it. They bought this company, and you know what? They recognized this is a company and a brand that already speaks volumes to people as a quality product, and they kept the name. What a smart move on their part. Now we're going into the 1940s, looking at World War II. You know, some of you may have heard of it. I was in the real war. 500,000 Aussie troops were given Blundstones. So many troops were given these Blundstones that the Americans, who you would think back in this day were having the highest quality product that they could possibly have going into war, were bartering and trading with Aussie soldiers to get their Blundstones. Some of them got them because they recognized that that's a quality product. That's something that's better than what we were giving our soldiers, and they just knew it. So they were trading, they were bartering, they were working out deals to get those boots because they knew that their feet were going to be better off for it. I don't know if you've ever seen Forrest Gump, but when Lieutenant Dan is telling stories about taking care of your feet and changing your socks and all sorts of stuff, it is a serious thing. When you look at World War One and the trench warfare and the trench foot that people got, a good pair of boots is a lifesaver. And I can't say that strongly enough. Like that's an extreme thing. Now we're going to the 50s. These Blundstones, and I'm not talking about the ones I'm wearing right now because the design has changed. And we're going to get into when they actually turned into the most popular version, which is right now these Chelsea boots that everyone wears. Blundstones as a work boot was a staple. Work boots were their thing. They were known for it. That's what they were doing. That's what they had. So much so that they made special boots to withstand temperatures of 350 degrees plus for smelters. I, I don't even know what to say about that. You don't even know that that's a problem because that's something you don't deal with on a regular basis. Blundstone recognized that people needed this and they created a boot for it. That speaks volumes right there. Now, as we mentioned, we're going to get to the point where it talks about Chelsea boots. These bad boys right here. I've been wearing these for, God, it's got to be going on 2 years. 1960s, the number 500, very similar to what I'm wearing right now, was designed. The Chelsea boot that we know today, the Blundstone that you see on every hipster, but also every hardworking person in Australia and every person across the globe who wants a good, comfortable, tough boot that they're going to wear every single day, that's easy to kick on and off. That's what we're talking about right now. That started in 1960s. A, a solid Chelsea boot. That's crazy to think about that. When my dad was 10 years old and change, these boots were just being invented, and I got them on my feet right now. That's how good they are. Talk about a testament to time. 1970s. The people who were climbing Mount Everest were wearing Blundstones. They were making boots just for that. So many Sherpas, the Nepali people, Nepalese, I'm sure I'm going to ruin that, were impressed by the Blundstone boots that the hikers were wearing that they were begging to keep them. These are the same people that are walking by with a house on their back and they're climbing up the mountain, walking past you, smoking a cigarette. They do this for their entire life. They were hoping that they can get a set of Blundstones because they liked it that much. That is amazing. I love to hear that. I'm the type of person where I don't mean to copy everything Jeremy Clarkson says because I know I mentioned it on a past video, but he mentioned, "Oh, I have this watch and it can go 100 feet underwater, and I'm never going to do that." But I bought it because I like the fact that it could, and that's the same reason that they make these crazy off-road SUVs. It's because we like the idea that it can do that. God forbid we need to. That's pretty amazing. So these people climbing Mount Everest were wearing Blundstones. Why do you think I got them on? All right, let's move on to the 80s. The 1980s, they finally started exporting to England. I don't know why this shocks me. I mentioned that Australia was a prison colony. It was specifically a prison colony for England. I'm Irish. That's in my past, that's in my history, my ancestors. Back in the day, a trip to Ireland, all you had to do was say the wrong thing to some British soldier or some policeman or steal something, and next thing you know, you're getting sent off to Australia. I wish it was that easy. Now I got to spend thousands of dollars and get on a plane and wait 18 hours and hope that my family's not going to cause a mutiny and throw me out of the plane on the way. It's pretty wild to think about that back then that was a prison colony. Now it's a destination. I have two places. I have more than that, let's be serious, but I have two places that are on the very top of my bucket list, and it's Ireland and Australia. And to think that, hey, my ancestors were from Ireland, and if they did something bad, they'd end up in Australia. So that's pretty crazy to think about. 80s is when they started to export to England. And that brings us into the 1990s, where Blundstone was supplying safety and security, basically tough work boots for kids, women. They were exporting to 22 countries. 22 countries. That's a huge improvement from the 1850 that the Blundstone family was just starting to take off from England to get over to Tasmania. That's pretty wild to think about. Now, we go into the 2000s. In 2000, the Olympic ceremony for Sydney, the Tap Dogs did this crazy number. I don't know if you remember it. I barely remember it, but they were wearing Blundstones. Something I didn't even know about. Why would I make that connection? When doing the history or the research for this video, that's when I came across it. And at this point, they're producing 1 million boots annually. Man, what a success story. Jump to the 2014 Olympics in Sochi. Sochi. I'm pronouncing that right. Right? Anywho, the Australian Olympic team was wearing Blundstones. Hard to imagine, huh? And I'm a red blooded American, like any of the rest of you probably watching this. But man, if I don't love some good nationalism from some other countries that just really show some pride in their companies and their brands and their products, I love to see that stuff. So to know that in 2014, the Olympic Games, the Australian team was rocking Blundstones, that's pretty awesome. That's good to hear. I mean, that brings us up to today. I mean, 150 plus years of quality boot making. 150 plus. I already mentioned these things 2 years old. You know what these looked like when I brought them out of the box? They looked like this. Do you know what they look like today? The same. 2 years later, a little bit of wear on the tread, a little bit of wear on the top, but I'm still rocking these. And I'm telling you, if there are 365 days in a year, I'm wearing these for 300 of them. These boots get their wear. They're waterproof up to the webbing, as far as I know. I've had them in some ice cold water without any intrusion getting into my socks, it is a game changer. And you saw how quickly I pulled that off. They got these tabs on here. Make it nice and easy to put them right back on. Don't mind my very loose sock that somehow came off a little bit easier than my boot here. Boom, right back on. I'm not worried about this boot in the least bit. They're super comfortable. They're good for hiking. They're good for walking. They're good for going out in the snow. Tomorrow we're expecting 2 feet of snow. Guess what I'll probably be wearing? These. Maybe my duck boots. I'm not sure. It all depends on how I'm feeling that morning. But this is a serious product with a serious history. And if you don't own a pair already, I strongly recommend you get them. Look, we're all learning here, and let's not forget, this is video number 3. So I just want to put it in here that this is my angle, and I am James Angley.